You're listening to the Big Cast, your source for the latest in financial technology. Brought to you weekly by the Best Innovation Group, with your hosts, John Best and Glenn Sarvati.
Welcome to another edition of the Big Cast. My name is Glenn Sarvati on behalf of the Best Innovation Group, where we like to do cool things with financial technology, and we talk about it with leaders in the industry with new content pretty much every Tuesday here on the Big Cast. I am going to do my best to croak my way through this episode. If you can't tell, I've got a little something going on in my voice. Tested negative, so right now it just seems to be a simple cold. Going to be speaking with Stephen Bugg, who is the CEO of Great Lakes Credit Union, about a passion project, a labor of love, or I guess labor of love and support might be the better way to put it, the CU Relief Fund for Ukraine. We'll be getting to that, which he's doing in collaboration with some other movers and shakers in the credit union industry. Remind you that you can always find out more about the Best Innovation Group by visiting our website, big-fintech.com. Find out about all of our products there, including generative AI and how we can help you move forward with solutions that are really, on one level, they're at the cutting edge. On the other level, you don't want to get left behind. Just understanding how you want to deal with them, including just even whether it's literally building the technologies or just deciding how the policies need to be applied to your individual organization. You'll find that and much more if you go out to the Best Innovation Group website. The other piece of information, breaking news this week that I thought was worth covering, has to do with, we've been talking quite a bit about the Credit Card Competition Act. This is related but somewhat different. The idea of surcharging on credit cards. The state of New Jersey just passed a new law. If you're not aware, New Jersey remains the only state in the union out of all 50 states where consumers cannot pump their own gas. Oregon had been in that camp as well until very recently, earlier this year, and they passed a law, and now, lo and behold, you can pump your own gas in Oregon too. So New Jersey is the only one left on that, which, and I'm not saying they're the only one on this one, but I thought it was kind of interesting that given that they're an outlier there, they did come up with a new law this time that they decided that was worthwhile in terms of approaching. This has to do with capping surcharges on any credit card transactions. I think that's become a little bit more common these days, where you see different retail institutions saying, if you want to use your credit card, you'll pay a little bit more. I think this is kind of along the lines, it makes sense with the Biden administration's push against junk fees, which I am a fan of. A fan of the push against junk fees, not against the junk fees themselves. Resort fees at hotels are a personal stick in my craw. The point of the legislation that New Jersey passed is that these surcharges for use of a card product should cover the cost that the merchant is incurring because of accepting that. It should not be a new source of profit. I think that makes some pretty good sense. You dig a little bit deeper, it gets a lot more complicated though. And I find this one to be pretty interesting on a couple of different levels too, in terms of which side of the fence you're sitting on this one. Payments Dive did a nice analysis of this. I'll post a link to their coverage of the legislation. And by the way, New Jersey is far from alone in this. They just happen to be the most recent that's done it, so it's kind of front and center in the headlines. The Payments Dive analysis pointed out that Visa and MasterCard on average charge 2.22%. In terms of interchange. So if you're thinking about the law, and it's a very short law, it doesn't get into a lot of details, which always gets very challenging in terms of how you're going to actually implement and enforce this. The wording seems to imply there may be a safe harbor that they're suggesting around the 2.5% range, although it says that retailers have to leave their books, make their books available to confirm that they're really only recouping cost. But one of the points that I'm thinking about on this is the 2.2% to Visa and MasterCard is not the cost that most retailers are incurring. That may be true for very, very large ones. Most are going through ISOs, and most are working on a further markup when these services are further, provided. How do you separate that from someone who's paying 3.5%, in addition to other quote-unquote value-added services that are going through, that also tend to get blended between debit and credit cards? That's where it really gets interesting to me. A couple of things. First off, we're talking about small business. Small business is not exempted here. So this rule seems to apply across the board to all types of businesses. When you think about the Durbin Amendment, you got the 10 billion thing. A lot of laws say under X number of employees don't apply. Also interesting, given that we talked before, fuel is exempted. Apparently, that's not an issue if fuel, gas stations want to surcharge for whatever reason. I'm not sure what the fuel industry has on the New Jersey legislature, but they've managed to lobby their way out of that one. Here's where I think it gets really interesting. The bill is stated to be, if you actually read the details, it's very explicit that it's about credit card only. It's not about cards, it's about credit cards. I have seen very few locations where I've gone retail who are using, who are doing surcharging that distinguish and differentiate between credit and debit cards. I believe because in most cases they're getting charged, or at least they believe they're getting charged the same for the two different types of cards. We do know that, from an actual network standpoint, it costs less. The fees on a debit card are significantly lower than a credit card. But when it comes to the actual billing to these companies after they work through the middlemen and whatnot, many of them wind up paying a blended rate. I'm not sure how all that works out. I'm kind of curious, does that mean that there is no cap on debit cards? That would be pretty perverse in terms of how you would do it. You also get into the question how much the typical merchant even understands this. I love there's a local pub around here that I have noticed this sign a few times. I've never bothered to ask them about it, but written on, it's not a piece of paper, it's actually emglazed right on their door. It says credit cards only. And I mean, I'm sure what they really mean is cash, no cash. I think it's a cash-free environment. I'm sure they don't mean credit cards only. I'm sure they take debit cards as well. In fact, if in a rational world, they would prefer to take debit cards. But in their case, they probably take both and don't care which. I certainly don't think that the individual servers care. So I find that interesting. The other flip side in terms of how you're going to implement this, what about discounts? You can surcharge for this, but it doesn't say anything. What if you set your prices higher and say you get a discount of 5%, whatever it might be? And I've seen some relatively high discounts that might be applied for paying via cash, or at least not paying via card. I don't see the law covering that one as well. Is it as simple as doing that to kind of get around it? Finally, and I realize I'm getting really geeky about this, but I do probably give this a lot more thought than I really ought to be. Kudos to the governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy. The press release that went out on this, I thought was interesting, actually includes a quote, the usual kind of rah, hey, we're really happy this was done by, people who were totally in support. Actually includes a quote from the Restaurant and Hospitality Association of New Jersey, the trade association. And their quote is perfectly civil, but clearly is not quite on the same page. They talked about how surcharge fees, while not new, have become prevalent in many industries as a way for businesses to recoup, not profit off of, some of the exorbitant fees placed on credit card transactions by credit card processing companies. So they're coming right out and saying, yeah, okay, fine, we weren't doing this anyway. But then they follow up and say that they also support federal legislation that would create competition among credit card processing companies in the hopes of driving down these fees to benefit both businesses and consumers. Veiled reference to the Credit Card Competition Act. And therefore, we've come full circle on the whole thing. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. I'm sure there's more to come on that one. One other thing, another kind of pet project that we've been talking about now for some time, The Bank of Dave, a movie that I caught on Virgin Atlantic flying home from the UK, probably better than a month ago now, almost 2 months ago, got its US release on August 25th and has gotten some pretty good reviews. Was reviewed in the New York Times, and according to Rotten Tomatoes, is currently at 85% as we speak, based on 24 reviews. The critics' consensus, again based on Rotten Tomatoes, a feel-good underdog story loosely rooted in real events. The Bank of Dave may not be the most memorable movie of its type, but it's got sweetness and charm to spare. Again, just a reminder, it's the idea of a local merchant who got rich in the selling RVs and vans, trying to help his community by starting a local bank and running into all kind of regulatory hurdles. It looks to me very much like a credit union or a CDFI. In real life, the bank is actually, it's not a bank, I should say. The bank that exists, quote unquote, is Burnley Savings and Loans. It's technically an independent lending company that's still trying to get a banking charter, but it is active in the space. Been trying to get in touch with them. they're clearly inundated with these types of publicity requests, and I'd still love to try to talk to somebody from the bank. Haven't actually succeeded in doing that yet. The thing I will again kind of emphasize based on what I saw, and you can go back to our prior episode to see our coverage of this, loosely rooted in real events. There are you can drive a truck through, or a Brinks truck, how about, through some of the differences between what really happened versus what is done in the plot of the movie. But entertaining nonetheless. Bank of Dave, take a look. We'll post a link here as well. Let's get on to the main attraction. Steve Bugg, the CEO of Great Lakes Credit Union, sharing the latest efforts of the credit union industry to attempt to provide support to the country of Ukraine. I'm here with Steve Bugg, who is the CEO of the Great Lakes Credit Union, where I have been a member for, hard to believe, almost 40 years at this point. For the purposes of this conversation, though, he is also spearheading an effort that is being labeled the CU Relief Fund for Ukraine. And that's what caught my attention for this conversation. Steve, thanks for taking the time on a Friday afternoon to talk about this.
Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate the opportunity. And also on behalf of Great Lakes, thanks for being a very, very long time member. We certainly appreciate your membership.
Going back to the days when I was at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, and you had a branch right there on site at the Chicago Fed.
Yes.
But for the purposes here, the CU Relief Fund, we've had coverage going right back to the early days of the conflict. Antonio Murra, who made a very impassioned speech on the stage at CUNA GAC back in 2020, and we'll post a link to our past conversation with him. But again, from a personal interest standpoint, and you explained to me how you came to the mix on this, really comes down to one of your partner organizations, Access Softtech, correct?
That's correct, Glenn. So we're a longtime client of Access Softtech. We have a great relationship with their entire employee base. But in particular, a lot of their employees are Ukrainian. And in fact, at the beginning of the war, they employed over 90 individuals in Ukraine. And so we at Great Lakes got to know a lot of them. We also at Great Lakes have some Ukrainian employees. So when the war broke out, Chris Donor, the CEO of Access Softtech, was looking at a way not only to help his employees, but also to do greater good for Ukrainians. And so he had asked a couple CEOs that were clients of Access Softtech if we would like to get on board and help form a foundation. So Tim Williams, the CEO of Snowfalls Credit Union, and myself started this initiative with Chris and the staff at Access Softtech to start really building out a relief fund and then looking at how we could help not only the Access Softtech employees, but also others that are being impacted in Ukraine. And something unique about the CU Relief Fund, it's also about partnering with credit unions in Ukraine. So I've had a great opportunity to network and talk to a CEO of a large Ukrainian credit union to find out what the war has done to impact their operation, but also, Glenn, to learn more about the movement in Ukraine and where they are and how we can collaborate and help them, because certainly we want the international credit union movement to survive and thrive.
Here's one thing that comes to my mind right off the bat, kind of front and center, is the 90 employees that Access Softtech had. Do you know, have they kind of moved off of the front lines to the extent that they were closer? Do you know what their status is? I've talked to a few other firms that had, usually it's technology workers there. And I know that, some of them wound up joining the war effort, but others kind of, once they got their families in a safe position, were able to kind of re-engage from a new home base. Do you have any idea how that's playing out for the Access team?
Yep, most of those employees are still employed by Access Softtech. There were several that Access Softtech sponsored to come over to the States, a couple over to Canada. And so those folks then are still employed, but they're over here in the US or in Canada. But the majority of the 90 are still in Ukraine, and they're still gainfully employed, which they appreciate, certainly. Some of them did have to go to locations where there was better internet coverage and away from the front lines so that they could conduct business. But certainly they appreciate getting that support, that paycheck, so they can help themselves and their family and friends. And then our foundation's executive director is based in Ukraine. He's Ukrainian. And so he also is a great conduit for those Access Softtech employees. And he, on a regular basis, is in communication with them and making sure that they're safe, and also finding out what their needs are so that the CE Relief Fund can help make sure that our efforts are really going to those that need that assistance.
And I assume that they serve as a proxy, because if those are the needs that those employees have, that probably speaks volumes for other folks that are in a similar situation on the ground.
That's right, Glenn. And the first three charities that we chose to partner with through the CE Relief Fund, two of those came through employee suggestions because they had an actual story related to those charities. And so they had that personal connection, which made it a little bit easier for our foundation to vet through those charities. And the first one was really helping the veterans that have prosthetic limbs and being able to provide those to them. And so that was a need that arose out of a suggestion from a Ukrainian employee, and that is ESPER. And they really provide bionic prosthetics to Ukrainians, primarily those vets that did lose their limbs. The second one, which is really unique, and I like it, it's UCAG, and it's a rehabilitation program for the children of fallen heroes. So it's getting them together, it's helping them mentally work through the war and the impact on them personally. And so it's really helping them cope with the loss of a parent. They're more of a war orphan, so to speak. So it's really helping them not only today, but laying that groundwork for helping them in the future as well. And then the third one that actually Chris Donor came across from the UK was a service that provides free medical services in the cloud. So GP Now, they provide telehealth and virtual care for the most vulnerable. So think of the war, think of the hospitals and the clinics, if they're even still in existence, right? They're really overwhelmed. So for those that need care, it's very hard for them to find that in Ukraine. So this provider provides that telehealth and virtual care as long as they can get internet to be able to communicate.
That's a great list. I mean, one of the things that caught my eye in terms of your initiative is the idea that I think you stated that you're looking to address needs that were overlooked by larger charitable organizations. And I've always been a big fan of the grassroots approach. Like you say, these were identified directly by the people on the ground saying, this is what we need. And it sounds like you've really hit the mark on that.
Absolutely. And these are the first three. Certainly, as we get up and running, we hope to add more over time. So those employees over there are great sources, but also our foundation director is working with other local nonprofits. And he's also in conversation with credit unions to see what is the need from their employees and their members, and then seeing if we can't certainly align future initiatives with those local nonprofits in Ukraine that can support the needs as well.
Now, I know what you're looking to do with this is also to open up the opportunity for additional credit unions who are so inclined to partner with you to, extend the reach of this charitable effort. What does that look like? I know you've got Deep Target also involved in this that might help with some of that rollout.
Yes, so a couple different initiatives. Deep Target is a great example of an organization that has a lot of credit union clients. And so with Deep Target's great marketing database, it's easy for them, if that credit union that partners with them would like, to take our pre-done banner ads to put into the Deep Target program that then pushes those out through their marketing channels to their membership. And then the member simply can click on that banner ad, and then it takes them to the portal, and it allows that credit union member of whatever credit union to donate to one of those three causes. And then our foundation does all the heavy lifting. They do the tax reporting back to the donor. They manage the funds and then manage the funds going out to those three charities. So Deep Target is a great strategic partner of a lot of our credit unions that are part of the Access Softtech network. But Deep Target has a lot of other credit unions that they partner with that can really take this pre-done marketing toolkit and then use it. And again, you don't have to be affiliated with Access Softtech to utilize this marketing kit. Any credit union, whether they're Access Softtech, Deep Target, if they reach out to us, the CE Relief Fund for Ukraine, we can put them in contact with our folks that can help them get this package of banner ads. They select which causes they want to market. Certainly they could market all of them, just like they do for their deposit and loan products. And then we, even at Great Lakes, we beta tested the program. We put it out on our online banking. So our members could easily transfer funds from their GLCU account to the foundation. So that can be done as well. And we would help them do that. And so, Glenn, just think about the power of the credit union movement and the number of credit unions that then, through their membership, can offer this cause-related marketing support to charitable causes and the impact that that can make on raising funds. So to us, that's another unique difference between us and some other organizations. Our trade organizations in the credit union movement do a terrific job in supporting Ukraine and really finding those nonprofits to work with as well. But this is another way that credit unions can directly get involved and use their members to help support the relief efforts if they so choose.
It screams people helping people.
Exactly. And that was going to be my next comment, right? This is really that mission work that credit unions have been founded upon. And it really supports that people helping people philosophy, and what a great cause to get behind. And I know credit unions like Great Lakes support great local charitable causes, regional, national, right? But internationally, this is just another way to support relief efforts. And we all pray and hope that the war stops soon, but we know that the rebuilding is going to be going on and on for a very, very long time. And so we believe that this program long-term can be a way to sustain that support. And that's why over time, we have the luxury of looking at what are those needs over time that we can help support. But it's really a pre-packaged marketing program, Glenn, that any credit union can utilize. And so in our current phase of our foundation, that's the phase we're in. It's the awareness getting out through the press like yourself to let people know that it is available.
And I was going to say, I mean, you're talking about kind of the pre-package, which makes it as easy as possible for a credit union to participate. But even beyond that, there's no requirement to use that, right? You're just looking for anybody who wants to partner in another fashion can also do that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And certainly we can provide reporting back to that institution on their membership, what's being donated, so they have a record of that. And the nice thing is with this package of banner ads, you can use them all at once. You can use one focus. So you could pick and choose what that credit union really thinks may resonate with their membership. And we also need to remember, kind of to your first comment, there are a lot of Americans that have direct links with Europe and with Ukraine. So we can't forget about those that are here in the US that also want to support the cause as well. So I think the credit union connection, the membership connection, what a great way to really support our movement and show that we can get behind these efforts and engage our membership.
Absolutely agree. We'll be posting a link to this in our show notes, but if anybody is just listening verbally here, wants to pick it up, the best way to find out more, the website address?
You can just put in CE Relief Fund for Ukraine and all kinds of information will pop up about our initiatives and our efforts.
And that's more focused toward the credit unions who would look to participate more than the members themselves?
It's correct. And then from the membership side, it would be utilizing the portal to donate through. So that would be through credit unions and other entities that are then supporting the initiative to raise funds.
Got it. And if anybody wants to find out more, they can track you down, I guess, through Great Lakes Credit Union, correct?
Correct, or certainly Tim from Snowfalls, Chris from Access Soft Tech.
That's
Yep.
That's Tim Williams, right?
Tim Williams, yep, the CEO of Snowfalls.
And that's up in Washington State, I believe.
You are correct.
And I'm sorry, Chris's last name at Access Soft Tech?
Donor, D-O-N-E-R.
Right. Wonderful. Hey, really appreciate you guys taking the time. Obviously, this is a passion project, but and a great one for both our the credit union community overall, but also naturally, most importantly, a way to help out the people in Ukraine.
Absolutely, and we appreciate your support, Glenn.
Steve Bubb from Great Lakes Credit Union and the CU Relief Fund for Ukraine. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
I'm also posting a link to a story in a local paper in California, Chico, California, I believe, about Access Soft Tech, one of the the service provider that's actually behind this. I think that their CEO Chris Donor has wisely decided to let the credit unions actually play the the leading kind of face to the community role in this one, because I think that's where it makes the most sense. But as we talked about in the interview, he's the one that's had people on the ground and still does have people on the ground in the Ukraine. Clearly, this is a topic of great importance to him. He made a trip over to the Ukraine with one of his top members of his management team as well. And there's a story about their trip to Hungary and then directly into the Ukraine back about a year ago. So interesting stuff there. Thanks again to Steve for talking to us about that. And again, you can take a look at all the show notes for links to how that looks as it's presented on the Great Lakes Credit Union website, as well as the CU Relief Fund for Ukraine website in itself. With that, another episode of the Big Cast in the books. Again, my name is Glenn Sarvati. You can find me via X at 154 Advisors or on LinkedIn. Obviously, Glenn Sarvati, Sarvady, that would be. You can find our Grand Poobah, John Best, at JB FinTech, and the Best Innovation Group at Big FinTech. You'll find us with new content pretty much every Tuesday, but we're going to be taking a break for the Labor Day weekend next week. We'll be back on September 12th when I will be on the ground at Finovate. Looking forward to doing that and obviously gathering some new interviews, as I always do when I'm out there, to share with you when we get back again. But even before then, while I'm there, we'll have some other stuff and new content all set for you on the 12th. Enjoy the holiday over the course of the next week. And as always, thanks for listening.
Check back each week for the latest from the Big Cast. Or better yet, we hope you'll consider subscribing for free via Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Tweet us at Big FinTech, email info@big-fintech.com, or visit us at big-fintech.com and click on the Media tab, where you can post a comment or check out our archive of hundreds of past episodes. See you next week.